cold. Even for Tassie it's cold. I live in the Yarra Valley in Victoria and it's cold there, but this rivals it. Okay, so I'm interested that so many people have come. This is lovely. Please come right down the front. The spot's right here. And that's the warmest spot in the room, we've decided, or will be. Yeah, okay. Well, I thought I might start with a story, an after lunch story. But first of all, I've got to tell you about how I came by this book. In my semi-retirement, I've been really enjoying working as a volunteer in my local primary school with children who often have very troubled family situations, and literacy and numeracy is a great challenge for them for some of the reasons we've heard today in relation to traumatic experiences to which they've been exposed. So I've been really enjoying working with children, which has reminded me of how it all started when I was a 14 or 15-year-old with children who we would now call traumatised. So I was down in Tasmania, in Hobart, for my daughter's wedding in March. And I had to get some money out of the Bendigo Bank from Hobart, and I went in there on the Saturday morning and I saw this book called The Principal on the Corner. And I thought, oh, the language is just about right for one of my little friends at the local primary school. She would love this. She'd love the pictures, and it takes her into a different space. And so I bought the book and then I read it and I thought, no, I will take it back to the school when I get back, but I'll use this with my interagency collaboration workshops and talking with people down in the 3 regions of Tasmania that I did in March with people within Department of Health and Human Services. So I'm going to read you the story. So I apologise, it is from Hobart. It's not a Lonnie story, but you've probably got someone in Launceston who would fit this bill. In fact, I want you to think, as you're hearing me read the story after lunch, of someone or people you know who might be in quite a different setting, but who show similar qualities to the principal in this school, who is a real person. It's Greg Turner, who won the 2011 recipient of the Australian Scholarships Group National Teaching Award. I just love it. It's called Local Stories of Local Heroes, The Principal on the Corner. Pity you can't see the pictures, but they're gorgeous. Those of you right down the front can see the pictures. There you go. That was a reason for coming down. Yeah. Once there was a little school next to a little river at the end of a little road. No one could see the school and no one cared about it. The buildings were awfully old, the teachers were terribly tired, the kids were restless and rowdy and rip-snortingly rude. My little friend loved that line once she'd mastered it. She loved it. Mums and dads looked at each other and said, "Our Jack, nor Emma, nor Harry, nor Charlie, nor Evie is never, ever going there." The little school was sad, no one cared, no new kids came. Perhaps it would have to close down. But just then, a new principal appeared. He looked the little school up and down, inside and out. He looked at the awfully old buildings and the terribly tired teachers and the restless and rowdy and rip-snortingly rude kids. And he said very firmly to all of them, "I believe in this school." Every morning, the principal was first to arrive at the little school. He stood at the corner of the little road on the school corner that no one could see. He stood in front of the little school and smiled and waved. "Hi," he said as kids came down with their mums and dads. "All set for a big day? Come on, let's go." Every school afternoon, the principal stood at the end of the little road on the corner that no one could see. He stood in front of the little school and waved and smiled. "You'll need a big dinner and a huge sleep," he said, as kids headed home with their mums and dads, "because we have enormous things planned for tomorrow." The principal stood at the end of the little road on the school corner that no one could see every single morning and every single afternoon, in the sun, in the snow, in the frost, and sometimes even in the snow. So sun, rain, frost and snow. Every kid and mum and dad passed the principal every school morning and every school afternoon. They all knew they could depend on him to be there, being best friend to the little school. The principal treated everyone with care and respect. He looked every kid and mum and dad in the eye. He smiled because he was happy. He listened because he was interested. He bent down to talk to the kids. He gave everyone a fair go. Today is a brand new day. Pretty soon, he knew all the kids by name, and the name of their class teacher, and the names of their mums and dads, and even the names of aunts and uncles and grandparents. Hi Sam, hi Mary, hi Tim. Pretty soon after that, word started to get out. The mums and dads and kids of the little school started telling everyone they knew, our principal is on our school corner, every school morning, on every school afternoon. We can talk to him every school day, and he knows every single one of us by our name. And pretty soon after that, things really started to happen. The teachers and children of the little school started looking up, seeing and talking. They started having ideas. They started trying things they felt too small to try before. They started walking taller and trying harder. They started being seen, and they started being proud of their little school. It's my favourite page. Grade 6s helped the grade 3s with maths. Grade 5s helped the grade 2s with reading. Grade 4s helped the grade 1s with painting. Grade 3s helped the preps with singing. Grade 2s learned big words. Grade 1s made everything colourful, and the preps sang a new song. The kids were so good that new teachers wanted to work at the school, but not one single teacher wanted to leave. Mums and dads found ways to join in too. They helped with the canteen and reading and sports teams. They had working bees, and they said to everyone they knew, come and see, come to our school fair, come to our quiz night, come and see our little school. So other mums and dads did start taking a look. Oh, our Jaden and Josh and Hugo and Holly and Layla would just love to come to school here, they said. Soon the little school did not have enough classrooms for everyone who wanted to come. Once there was a little school next to a little river at the end of a little road. It was very hard to care about when the buildings were awfully old, the teachers were terribly tired, and the kids were restless and rowdy and rip-snortingly rude. Everything changed. People started to love the little school because the principal believed in it and stood at the end of the little road on the school corner for everyone to see. And on the back page there's a little bit that Greg Turner's written, which I wanted to share with you. When I arrived at the school, I found a school with great bones, but it didn't feel as though it was connected to its community. It felt a little soulless. As the new principal, I needed to meet as many people as I could to understand from them what they felt about their school, what they were interested in and passionate about, and more importantly, to make connections between students, families, and the school. The relationships and connections developed over 10 years of talking every day to parents, students, family members and carers. The relationships that developed were, that was invaluable in developing community, developing connectedness, developing pride, sharing growth and development of children and families, sharing student achievements. Standing on the corner gave me this opportunity every day. It also provided me with the opportunity of informing the school community of who I was, what I cared about and valued, and that I was here to help the school, like teachers help students, to the best it could possibly be. And I love that little story because in part it reminds me of one of my heroes, the mic. I picked that one up, or this one. Will this do? Oh, I need this as well. Did everyone hear that story? That's good, okay. One of my heroes is Weary Dunlop, I think because my father was a prisoner of war, although not of the Japanese during the war. And I once read in a biography of Weary Dunlop when he was up on the Burma railway where many people, many men of very different nationalities, including Australians who were prisoners of war, died. 1 in 3 Australians died there. Many more died from other nations like India and neighbouring countries. And they were, of course, working under brutal and starvation conditions. And what deeply moved me about this biography was one old prisoner of war who said that Weary Dunlop, whose job in part it was to determine who was fit enough to work when nearly all the men were far too sick to do any work. So he had to make that invidious decision each morning. he only was able to keep a very small number back in the camp as sick. So he in a way was part of the machinery that sent those men out. And the man said, Weary would be waiting for us, even in the dark, till the last man staggered in. And there was something deeply moving about that. This is not the warrior, this is not the boxer, this is not the man with his fists up, and there's something deeply almost maternal, but also very masculine about that love and that vocation, that it wasn't till the last man staggered back into the camp at night that he got up and did whatever he probably did. So probably doing some heroic surgery with goodness knows what sort of instruments. But it was the notion that he was waiting for them, which I think probably sustained some of those men enough to stagger back and not just collapse and die. So that is a sort of a light example that I've just read of something which I think it reminds me of Weary Dunlop, and it's the profound notion of leaders as servant leaders, of really, really being there for those they serve. And what I'd like you to do is to talk with each other in pairs or just in threesomes, but in really small groups, about someone you know who may be with no big profile, not someone whose name is known, but someone you know, and it might be a volunteer, it might be actually one of the families that your services serve, or it could be a staff member, or someone you've known much, much earlier in your life, who's got something like that quality, something like that depth of caring and compassion which leads them to be there, and often over a long period of time. It's not just rising to the occasion for a short time, but they're in there for the long haul. And I wonder if you could just share with one other person, or three if that's what happens naturally, some reflections about that person and their qualities, why you've chosen them, because these are the people who exemplify vocation, which I'll come to in a minute and we'll talk about what that means. But first of all, I'd like to give you an opportunity to reflect on someone you've known. So if you'd like to do that maybe for 10 minutes or so everyone gets a few minutes, that'd be great. Another few minutes? Yeah. Another few minutes? Does anyone need another few minutes? No? You're very efficient. Okay. That was great to hear your buzz. Now, we don't want to turn them into saints, because that'll just make us all feel totally inadequate. So I need to tell you another little story about Weary Dunlop. Weary Dunlop lived to a ripe old age, and he was still doing surgery, sometimes pretty heroic surgery, in his old age. And he would live in Melbourne, he lived in Kew, and he operated at Cotham, in Cotham Road. So it was a short drive to work. But Weary Dunlop had a very short fuse, and he had a very fiery temper, and he was known sometimes to get involved in a little road rage. So even as an elderly man, on one occasion, he got into some sort of altercation with the driver, somehow ended up with a broken, bloodied nose, went off to the hospital, operated all day, and then was said to have gone home and with the handle of a toothbrush set his broken nose in the bathroom to the mirror at night. And this is a tough man, and a bit wild. So I just use that as an example because sometimes when we talk about people that I've just invited to talk about, it's easy to get into sort of saintly mode about them, and they're not, None of us are. So I do this in the spirit of really honouring their great gifts, but not elevating them to a point where we don't feel that they're real people. Thank you for reminding me about the mic. Mm-hmm. Would people like to share some of the qualities of the people that they just described and spoke about. Passion, yeah. I've said commitment to a cause because I think that might be what it is. It's not commitment to necessarily a job or a position or even a role. It's sometimes bigger than that. And the cause might be someone at home caring for his or her disabled children. That's a long-term commitment to a cause. It could be someone leading a social movement. So this can be really micro or really macro, but it's the passion that I think is a really, really important thing. We might think about where that comes from. Any other qualities that you found about the people you described?
Empathetic, they always listen and take on board things that they hear from random people.
Yeah. So empathy, and that'll often go with compassion, won't it? Yeah.
Genuineness.
Yes, absolutely. It's the sincerity, isn't it? Mm. Yeah, they're the real McCoy, aren't they? This can't be put on, no. Yes, that they don't always hold it to themselves. And not, of course, everyone might not have every one of these, but they've got enough of these qualities. Yeah. And you think, where's that come from? No. And in some instances, unconditional love.
Well, I'm thinking of this unsolicited responsibility, not for a family member, even, but just an older man who he felt a sense of responsibility to, mentor younger ones when he didn't have to. He just took it on board. So that sense of responsibility beyond himself.
Yeah, which you sometimes see in kindness to a stranger, or
yes, but in a way. So
yes.
It was unsolicited, but that continuing years of sort of responsibility
Yeah.
came in his sphere, I suppose.
So holding them, or the generosity of spirit, or your words might be better than mine.
No, I think it's just that he did feel responsible. He felt a sense of responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting a bit faint, I think. Might change to something else. Any others? Yeah. Honest, yeah. Anonymous.
The example we had was a person who didn't want to be publicly recognised.
Yeah. Are you happy with humble? Happy with humble? We'll start it over here. Yeah. So it's not done with an eye on the audience. No. Yeah.
So not, I think that's a bit blurry boundaries, but not limited to a role and go beyond what the role was.
Yes. Yeah. If I just put above and beyond, will that capture it? Often that's above and beyond the call of duty or something like that. Yeah.
A vision to have see potential in others.
Yes. Which goes with the empowerment, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's this hanging in over the long haul. People who might not even see it in their lifetime, which is really extraordinary. Yeah.
Really wanting well for the other. So in Italian they talk about various types of love. So they talk about passion, compassion, amore, which is romantic love. But to go on your bed means I want well for you.
Oh, can you come and write it in Italian? That's lovely.
And wanting well for the other person is, I think, something that someone who's committed and...
Isn't that the fascinating thing about languages? That sometimes in one language it can't be translated into one word. in say, translating this into English, you have to say a whole sentence. And how do we say it?
Ti voglio bene. I want well for you.
Ti voglio bene. Oh, I love that. Thank you.
We just talked about being very human in the response. So one of our examples was someone who was terribly disappointed in like somebody else's reaction to that situation. So she was able to say how upset she was, but then continued to be quite remarkable in everything. So very human in her, in the struggle or that acceptance of reality. If that makes sense. So not, as you say, not on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Someone who's very connected to themselves and aware of what they're doing. So I've summarised into human.
Yeah, well, why not say human?
Down to earth.
Humanity.
Yeah. No, that, and you can see how these qualities can't often be reduced to one word. But we'll put that in quotation marks because it carries all the things you've said. Yes? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, often there's enormous joy. Not always. Not every person will have all of these qualities. But yeah. Yes? Yes, sometimes there is real courage in this stuff, isn't there? Yeah. Did you want to say a little bit more about brave? What?
I think sometimes people need a brave to keep going.
Yes.
All those things I think are brave.
Yeah.
Against the odds type.
Yes.
You know, around your governance, politics, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So really looking at where the effort needs to be put.
So there's a real strategic skill in that, isn't there? Which could be emotional intelligence, but it could be other forms of knowledge and skill. Have we got one word for it? Or is it just too complex to give one word for it?
Maybe skillful, analytical.
But you're drawing on the mind and the thinking as well as these emotions and values, aren't they? Wise. Hey, is wise okay? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes? Knowledge, yes, which might go with wise, yeah. Although there is that wonderful T.S. Eliot saying, isn't there, about where is the knowledge and information, where is the wisdom in the knowledge? So knowledge and wisdom not always one and the same. But yeah, there's often a great deal of knowledge. Sometimes it's not the book learning variety. Sometimes it's a deep experience that comes from having lived, and it's lived experience.
To be able to confide and trust.
The trust is really critical.
I think invariably they do have what more things about integrity. That you could always
Yes.
tell, they don't just walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yes.
They're always people that you just know have integrity.
And trust is a really central part of integrity, but integrity is probably a bit more than trust. Yeah. Yes, which is a bit like the endurance, but it really is the commitment, isn't it? Yeah. Any other last one? Inspiring. Yes, they are inspired and they're inspiring. Yeah, the very fact that you've chosen to talk about these people, it's a great one to end on, because I was going to ask, are people aware of these people you've just shared a little about as role models? You're consciously aware of carrying them within you in some way, or how would so-and-so have dealt with that or reacted, or... Yeah. I don't think we tell enough stories about these people. Jim was talking about storytelling today and had some wonderfully rich stories about the communities that he had been part of mobilising or others had. But, and I think we need to tell community stories, but I think we also need to talk about individuals, particularly those individuals who worked in ways that it didn't easily sound like an individual story. It was in fact a group story. They often don't claim credit for it, and they'll say, oh, it was a team effort. We all pull that one off, you know. How many of you spoke about someone you've actually worked with in the workplace? quite a lot. Someone in your family? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah. And others, people you'd known through a community? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So what really fascinates me is, what's the source of this? Where do these qualities come from? And some of those are values, and some of those are emotions. They're values, they're virtues, they're emotions. And I'm really interested in what the source of them is, but I'm also equally interested in what sustains them. And I'm wondering whether some environments in which we work or live are much better at sustaining those qualities than other environments. So I'm interested in how we nurture those in people, so that you can get a culture in a team or in an organisation or in a family or in a school. You get a culture of those values coming into ascendancy. I'm wondering if anyone has worked in a place, past or present, where they really felt that those qualities were present to a significant degree. Nothing's perfect. All human organisations, from the family up to the United Nations, are flawed because we are. So again, we're not looking for perfection, but where there was a critical mass, enough of those values, virtues, emotions, enough of the time for you to feel it as part of the culture of that environment. Anyone? Yeah, nods? Yeah. When you work or you live in a space like that, it actually draws you into something that is bigger than yourself, I think. Do you agree? Yeah. So I wonder if you could have another conversation, and that's about what conditions, in your experience, have most strengthened those qualities in you? What is it about the environment? And it could be all sorts of environments: families, workplaces, a friendship group. It could be an activist. It could be church. What is it about the creation of the culture which nurtures and sustains and grows those qualities? Could you have a bit of a chat to the person near you about that? I love it when people have those conversations, and I really hate breaking them off. Any sort of insights or reflections that people could share with the larger group about what's happening when a group, a team, a collective starts to create a culture based on qualities like that? Particularly those who've experienced this. Not everyone will have experienced working in an environment with these qualities, I'm sad to say. But for those who have, share something about what it's like, what it feels like, what makes it like that. Yeah.
Some of the things that, some of those things like joy, they start to increase. Once you get that environment where everybody feels included and there's no judgment or anything, and you're all working in this group, then everybody starts to feel all those things, like the passion builds and the joy builds, and then people go out of their way to do a bit extra because they've got a stake in it, or they feel they've got a stake in it.
People really feel they belong. And they belong to something bigger than themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've all got this common goal,
Yeah.
and you're all working for that common goal.
So there's a common goal, a common vision, and you feel it's just genuine.
Yes,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
cool. You know, you come out of any meetings, instead of coming out like this, you come out with a real buzz.
yeah. Yeah. Sure. I might not be able to reach right to everybody.
No, I was just thinking maybe that you feel like you belong in that group, so that sort of brings that all together, all those things that you want and other people are wanting the same things, so that sense of belonging.
Yes. I think belonging is a really important part of that your identity and this group, there's a goodness of fit, and there is that sense of belonging. Anything beyond belonging? Belonging and the common vision and the joy that starts to, yeah.
I think you're a product of your environment, your work environment.
Yep.
So if you've got more of those on board, then it perpetuates itself. So even if you're not usually a happy person, because you walk into that environment, you are a happy person, you are an invested person, it perpetuates itself.
There's a feedback loop, isn't there? Yeah, and of course you can have the opposite. And we've heard people touch on that today in terms of demoralisation. The negative feedback loop can be very, very powerful and probably would require another whole day for us to talk about how organisations that are in that space are, under some circumstances, able to turn into the positive feedback loop that you've described. So it lifts everyone. Yeah. Yes.
So the work you do, you're on the same page, you're heading towards the same goals and things like that.
Absolutely.
All the people and the situations we spoke about, commitment was not just a month or 2 months, it was a long term, you know, that consistency of being there, being present, and possibly even seeing the outcome of the effort, so that commitment.
It's a long haul, and you might not see it in your lifetime. I recently went up to Mile Creek in northern central New South Wales, where there was a massacre of Aboriginal people in the 1830s. Almost 40 Aboriginal women, children and elderly men were massacred. And one of the unusual instances where the white stockmen who committed those murders were in fact brought to trial and were convicted. But what really struck me was this little plaque near the entrance that was a tribute to a man, and I'm not sure if he was Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, but he lived in a local town, and for years, going back decades, he'd been pushing to have some memorial at Mile Creek to make reference to what had happened there. And the date of his death showed you that he didn't live to see it. There's something about people who can hang in there for a cause, not knowing if they'll see it in their lifetime. And I just find that truly inspiring, that time dimension. Yeah. That they're valued. Yes. That they're valued because they belong and they're contributing. Yeah.
And I think people in their community, or people that we've spoken about, have that ability to be able to, yes, they've got the genuineness and they've got the empowering, but most of all, they give those people the self-worth.
And that's what I think Greg Turner was doing in the school. See, I think that it wasn't just the service providers, the teachers' morale. He's actually in there tapping the capacity of children to be contributors in the school community, and the parents and others. So it's not just the staff, is it? It's drawing everyone in to being a contributor and getting some of the sense of belonging that comes from that and being valued for that and by that. Yeah. Yes?
First one you mentioned about persistence. All these sorts of values are very difficult to manage in a sustainable environment. In workplaces, they try.
Yep.
Whether it be through mission statements, value statements, all of those sorts of things that they then impose on
Yep.
their workers.
Yes.
You know, that stuff can too close to the speaker. Can become almost self-imploding
Yeah.
as well. So whilst that might become a culture of, you know, caring and nurturing, it can also become a culture of rebellion, in the social justice sense, whether it's at
Yes.
your own employer or the community at large, or the people that fund you, or
Yep.
whatever it be. And that level of rebellion drives this, but that doesn't last.
Yes, that can be sporadic, but I think when it's not genuine, when the mission are the words on the wall of the waiting room and in the glossy annual report, if that is not lived out, then you're better not putting those words on the wall, because those who work and who see that and feel that disjunction every day, that's really corrosive. Yeah. So I guess it's how do we sustain the integrity of the mission of our organisations.
I actually recall a speaker at a workplace saying that if your personal values are not aligned with the values of the company, then leave.
Oh, no.
And that's very interesting, because maybe...
People walking out that day.
Wow. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I was in WA in 2006 on the Child Protection Week, child protection being my main area of interest, and I was in the wheat belt of WA, and child protection departments are often demoralised places. There's often a tension for all the reasons I don't need to go into. But in this particular place, it felt really, really different. And I knew that through three ways. One, I left the venue where we were doing this conference and went to do an interview on the radio station, and I did it in a room where there were photographs of all the children that office was responsible for on the wall, and they were beautiful photographs. These weren't mug shots of kids, these were beautiful natural photographs of children. And I thought, gee, every day they come into this room and they look at the photographs of the children they're responsible for, staring at them from the wall. And the other thing was that an Aboriginal woman was there at lunchtime. I expected no one to be there. And I said, oh, hello. I said, are you the receptionist? She said, I used to be the receptionist. Noongar woman. I used to be the receptionist, she said, here. But I come back as a volunteer because my people need to see a face like mine when they come into a place like this. I thought, goodness, a statutory child protection service, having a volunteer, an Aboriginal woman volunteer. And I thought, there's something different about this office, even though the wider department is one that struggles for morale and with high turnover, etc. And then the person who was the leader of that whole area, she came to me in the afternoon and said, Dorothy, we're going to be really late getting back to Perth today. One of my colleagues I really need to spend some time with. She really needs me to be there for her. I thought, that's it. You are living out the values, and everyone can see that, and people then will feel a synergy. But you raise a really interesting question about people who stick it out in organisations where there isn't that synergy, and what they may need from others to sustain them in that. And they're often heroic people who don't get up and walk. Sometimes you have to walk, but sometimes there is a real courage in staying. We've only got a few minutes, but I just wonder if there's some last reflections that people have.
I was just thinking about what I said about belonging. Maybe it's what's in common and that sense of community, because that's probably what brings it all together. So just thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's that commonality. And, you know, not looking at the divisions or the other reasons, but I forgot that quote, but you know, what brings us together is greater than what divides us, sort of.
Yes, yeah. And I guess what comforts me is looking at how organisations, if you look at them over time, go through troughs, which are really tough, and sometimes, under certain circumstances, something turns, there's a turning point, and it starts to go up again. And I fully understand that. And it's not as simple as a new leader coming in and being top down. Sometimes there's a process that moves in the group to help that happen. I think we are heading in for some very turbulent times for all the reasons that Rob has just outlined to us before lunch. So I think that the challenge for our organisations, more than ever, will be to pay attention to the qualities that sustain ourselves individually, but also us collectively. And there will be very tough times when some of the cutbacks will result in some of our fellow staff members possibly losing jobs, and certainly seeing the hardship experienced in the community. So I do think we're going to go through very tough times, and I just invite you to think about how, as an individual, but also as a member of a group, we might draw on the resources to rise to that occasion, not in a Pollyanna sense, at a time sometimes where there is turbulence and anger and activism. It's not all sweet and light. But I think we will need to connect with one another beyond the boundaries of our organisations to a greater degree than perhaps we have at times that haven't been so tough. So who are those people? What are those webs of relationships? What do each of us have as our responsibility to strengthen those is probably the challenge I'd like to leave you with today. And I think that's probably it if we're going to get back into the main auditorium. So thank you for your very active participation.